You're listening to This Magical Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the depths of spirituality and personal growth. Hello, everybody. This is This Magical Life. I'm Philip Carr-Gomm, and this is Stella. And this is an interview podcast thingy that we're doing. and it's lovely, Stella, to have you here. Now, I came across your work. I was looking online. I just saw some videos that you'd done, and I really loved what you were saying. And so I thought it'd be fun to have a chat. So tell me, what is it that fires your passion, and what's these videos that you're making and these things that you do? Tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, well, you likely found me through Instagram or YouTube on social media. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me into your home. Firstly, I was just saying how this is my first in-person interview and podcast. A lot of what I do is online. So
from a distance.
From a distance. So this is like a really beautiful adventure across Sussex. Never been down here before. So I'm from South Wales, and all of my work is around preserving and reclaiming spiritual tradition and history from Wales as a Welsh woman, but specifically South Wales, where there isn't a lot in writing. There isn't a lot in comparison to up north. So my journey is at the moment in exploring South Wales spirituality, folklore and mythology. But when you found me, maybe last year, it was more broader Celtic studies, and we were just talking about like the complications with that word and everything, and how we could probably do a whole podcast on it if we wanted to. But that word brought me into understanding there are unique beliefs, practices, myths and traditions in even every little village across Britain and Europe. And there's just these little sort of like mounds to dig into. And that's what I enjoy doing and then sharing with people, because it took me quite a long time to find my ancestral purpose, actually, like my lineage's ancestral purpose. So a part of my work is to create an online platform where I also interview people, and wherever people can find what I found difficult to find for myself.
To find for yourself, because one of your big sort of messages is why wasn't I told this? Isn't it? And you alluded to something just then that's really interesting that people may not know about, which is, the south and north of Wales. And tell us about that, because there is a difference. Yeah. What is that difference? Yeah,
well, the north of Wales, everyone I know was brought up in Welsh speaking. Uh-huh. So today it's Welsh speaking. You could talk about the historical differences, but I wasn't even taught about the differences growing up. I wasn't taught about the Mabinogi. We were sort of briefly taught about the various like rebellions across the Merthyr Rising and the different rebellions across South Wales, but I wasn't taught about Welsh culture and history as if it was my own. Whereas from what I understand with my Welsh speaking friends, especially those from up in North Wales, is the identity of being Welsh is a lot less fragmented and is a lot stronger.
A lot stronger. And is that because the kind of the influence of the English didn't extend so much up into the north? Is it a kind of geographical thing that?
Yeah, geographically, the mountain range. You've obviously got like the River Severn, the estuary, and like the docks across from where, Cardiff up to Port Talbot and further up. So you've got like the geography is the reason.
Is the geology different? Do you happen to know whether the geology is different?
Yeah, so up in north there's a lot more slate. Uh-huh. There's a lot of coal like down in south. So there's a lot of our coal is not used by us. The water across Wales is a lot more water. I actually saw a recent diagram, a map of how our water is going to be transferred even more so now, because of a lot of the aquifers are drying up in England. So there's a lot more water there. The geographical, I'm not a geographer obviously, but the difference is in the rock and the stone. My partner's a rock climber, so he talks about the differences. When we go up to north, he's like, wow, look at this, it's so different. But
well, you see, I think that's so interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday about New Zealand, and I was saying which part attracts you of New Zealand. She was talking about Wanaka, and Wanaka is on this sort of sheet of schist or something like that. And when you're driving across the South Island, you absolutely notice it. As you start to get towards Wanaka, you feel different. You can just feel different. You go, what on earth is this? Then you look at a geological map and you can see it. And this is so interesting, particularly for people interested in Druidry and earth mysteries and all this thing. It's like we are so influenced by the land that we're on. I mean, here we're on chalk.
Yes.
So there's this extraordinary way in which this whole area that, you and I had lunch by the Long Man an hour or so ago, and that's all on chalk. You've got the chalk hill figure of the Long Man.
Yeah, it's just so much white everywhere you look.
So much white everywhere.
The paths are white.
The paths are white.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting that South and North Wales is different geologically, it's different geographically in terms of landscape features.
Yeah, the earth is different. So you get like the Cecily oak a lot more up north because they prefer the ground there.
Right.
You get like the sort of English oak, I believe, more down south. But this is Cecily oak are the longer oaks with like the really twirling.
Those are the ones that are evergreen, aren't they?
I'm not sure if they're evergreen, but the branches grow a lot taller and they're really twirling.
Yes,
whereas the Cecily oaks down in South Wales, they grow smaller and they look a bit more like glens.
Okay.
They don't grow as high, but yeah, there are differences for sure. When I first visited North Wales, I just cried, actually, because it was just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I was in a car with my friend and we were playing Misty Mountains and just like going through, and it was just like, incredible. And I just thought, like, no wonder these stories come from these lands. You can see the giants in the mountains.
Yes.
You can see the dragons in the mountains. And, the same with South Wales and across Britain. And it just really got me thinking, well, what stories came from where I'm from in the south. And our closest mountain, the Garth Mountain, used to be a hill. I don't know if you've heard the story.
No.
So it used to be a hill, and then it was turned into a mountain because the people in the Garth village literally turned it into a mountain so that it hit that criteria, so it was high enough. But the mountain opposite that one is just a giant quarry, and you just get so many quarries and mines across South Wales. Like the feeling that I get in the difference between South and North Wales is it's less tampered with. Like the earth in itself is less tampered with up there. There's not as many mines and quarries. You can, drive and walk for hours, and you're just, the wilderness is as it is. So the spirits are a lot more alive there. They feel a lot safer there. Eric from Caimabon, right, is like he turned Caimabon into that place so that the spirits could feel safe, is what he told me anyway. And I really feel that up there. Like spirit interaction when it comes to earth spirits is they're a lot more alive. For those of you who do work with them, it's like you can sense in places where it's easier to connect, and it's because they feel safer because it hasn't been as tampered with.
But the beaches in the south of Wales are magnificent, aren't they?
Yeah,
I mean, they're just extraordinary. And I'm not sure whether you get the same great expanses of sandy beaches that you do in South Wales. Do you get the same in the north?
They're not as up in the north. You do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, there are some massive beaches up north. I'm not sure what their names are, but you can more than that you can drive on. There aren't any in South Wales, as far as I know, that you can just drive on for miles. That is like normal to do that. There's a lot of rockier beaches down in South Wales, like Ogmore, Dunraven Bay. There's a lot of like Merlin-based history around that area.
Right.
And
how do you relate to Druidry? What does Druidry do for you?
Mindfulness among the trees is, I feel, no one can argue with that. No one can argue with that. I think there's such an essential, is so essential, regardless of whether you have a spiritual outlook, to spend more time with trees and be in a state of mindfulness. I think is really essential for everyone. I see that like beyond my spiritual connection to the land, like the people I know, like even my grandfather, like he spent years walking the English countryside. There was a walk that goes from like the north of Sussex down to the coast that he said took him about 10 days, and he'd used to do that sort of thing.
Right.
So my grandfather has always walked and always been fascinated with the silence and the peace that he'd get from just walking the countryside. And for me, that, although didn't bring him any sort of spiritual revelations or experiences, which shocks me because I get a lot of very profound spiritual insight and experiences when I'm walking. But I was brought up with the importance of mindfulness in nature. So when I found Druidry, it was just, it made sense that in that way. And then the idea of going into the subconscious realm and like bringing in an aspect of like core shamanism and exploring the inner landscapes really interested me. But the reason I joined Obod, I haven't completed it, was because of the like it initiates you into creativity, and I feel like some people need like an anchor into that. Like I'm going to university soon to do a master's in illustration. But what I really love about the bardic path is that it sort of forces you into that creative side of the self, which is innate in all people. Like everyone is an artist, musician, dancer, singer, and it just like reminds us of that. So I just think creativity, mindfulness, nature, they're just essential parts of who we are that we've lost as Western people, you know.
And as a way of reclaiming it, one way, there are lots of ways to reclaim these strands, as it were, but one way is to work with Druidry, because it sort of brings them together and there's a structure there. And then, of course, in Wales, there's this tremendous history, you know, even with cultural Druidry in the Eisteddfod. I mean, when you were a kid, did you have Eisteddfod?
Yes, so we did the Eisteddfod, and didn't really know what the history was or what was going on.
Did they talk about it much, or was it just happened?
Yes, but it was only in primary school. It didn't carry on for me into high school. And we didn't have to go to the National Eisteddfod because I wasn't in a Welsh-speaking school.
Okay.
So Welsh speakers, they go to the Eisteddfod as like on a school trip, like, and they experience the whole thing. Whereas we just it was a bit like sports day, but for art.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. So we'd have different colours. You'd have like the Coch team, Gwyrth team, like the red, green, yellow, blue, and whoever won the most like points would be the winning team, and then one pupil would be awarded the chair, would be chaired as the bard based on their poetry. And it was just a whole day of celebrations, but we'd lead up to it. So we'd have like a few months leading up to it to write the poetry and like finding out what team we're in. And there would be like dances. And actually in high school, we honoured the day, but we didn't have like any chairing of a bard. But I remember that on the Eisteddfod day, we'd go into different groups. And but I wasn't that interested in it. A lot of my work is actually like it wasn't important. It wasn't important for me.
School has a way of taking the life out of stuff, doesn't it?
But it dilutes it. Yeah, it just makes it boring.
It makes it boring in some way. And I remember, and university can do that too. Have you done a degree?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you study in your degree?
Contemporary design and craft.
Right. Was it a good degree? Did you
I loved it. I absolutely loved it because it was very hands-on craft and everything. But the final year was in during COVID, so I didn't get to actually complete it. So
right. Okay.
It was a bit of a dull because of that, you know.
Yes. Because I think somebody said to me, you know, if you read English at university, if you do a BA in English literature, because you want to be a writer or because you want to write novels, it'll kill
I've had my friends.
Yeah, it'll kill any desire for it. And I remember, you know, doing the psychology degree in London, everybody being almost sort of shell-shocked by how fantastically boring it was in the beginning. And it was like an endurance test. If I can get through these stats classes and these experimental design classes and all the rest of it to get to the sort of juicy bits in psychology, then, you know, and people dropped out like crazy, you know, because they couldn't take it. Yeah, it's like, for me, like the way I think about the subjects and the lessons, my brother is just in sixth form, and I can like reflect on how I was in school and education, and it's almost as if the subjects are taught in a way that they aren't a part of life. They're forced upon you as a child. Whereas now I've come out of it, history is life, art is life, like mathematics is life. They're not these subjects. Like I think we separate ourselves from them. And when we have a bad experience with them, sometimes it can even lead to trauma depending on how the teacher treats you. You know, you can just completely you can switch off whole subject areas in your life because of the way a teacher behaves. Yeah, absolutely. And something that you pointed to there with the Eisteddfod about the competitive nature of it. Somebody wrote a very interesting Mount Hemus. You know, we have a scholarship every year, and somebody will write a paper, and then it's published in a series of volumes, and we have conferences and so on. And somebody wrote about how in Obod, what we've managed to do is shift the focus of the Eisteddfod from it being focused on the end product to it being focused on the process. So in other words, with the Eisteddfod, the traditional Eisteddfod, as you say, there were competitions and you were marked and graded, and then somebody wins, and then everybody else loses by definition.
Yes.
And whereas when we do Eisteddfod Awen at ceremonies or, at camps and all the rest of it, it's all about the joy of actually being created, of singing in front of people, of reciting your poetry, whatever. It's not about an end result. There are no prizes.
Yeah, it was all about that, as a child. And I think all of the sort of like seasonal celebrations that we have, like Easter, Halloween, Christmas, our way of celebrating is that result. It's not about the journey. And it just sucks the life out of where it came from. It doesn't honor the lineage of where it came from. Then you've got the conversation around, well, where did the Eisteddfod come from? It came from someone who I believe channeled it. Yolo Morganwg, it was from people who were channeling and working with from my understanding, working with the visionary world. We were talking about like Carl Jung and Dali. You've got Salvador Dali's tarot behind, it's like what they were bringing through was not from history. It wasn't like a historically
could be proven in terms of valid historical lineage.
Yes, which doesn't make it any more or less important for me.
Because that's a really interesting point. So you are obviously, because there's, for those viewers who aren't aware of it, a key figure in the Druid revival was Iolo Morganwg, who wrote about Druid ceremonies and the lore of Wales and of the Welsh Druids and so on into the world. And for a while, everybody thought that he was conveying genuine information that he had gathered on his travels. I think, was he a surveyor, or he used to travel around the country visiting old country homes, didn't he?
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what he was doing in that sense, but from what I was taught was that he was presenting a factual history that included spiritual traditions that were ancient, that you could go back 1,000 years to the Druids, and this is what they were doing, and this is sort of what he said. And we don't know him, so maybe he didn't. So maybe that was projected onto him. But actually, he was, when I just said that he was actually channeling it, he wasn't making it up. There's this argument, he was just making it up.
So the argument against it is he was a fraudster, that he, and a forger even. And so the pendulum swung the other way from people being enthusiastic about him. It was like, no, this is terrible. He's deceived us. But now there are people who are of a different opinion, who, like yourself, who say, well, yes, okay, but he was channeling. He was receiving it.
Yes.
He was inspired.
Yes.
In that sense.
And, he was also an addict. And, he, whether he said this was the history, which he might have lied in his very confused state, it's now something that all Welsh people celebrate, and it's brought us all together.
Well, isn't that interesting?
The Eisteddfod, the actual festival, is the largest cultural festival in Europe. So, maybe it wasn't so bad. what he did,
Exactly. And when you say he was an addict, just to be clear about that, I think, didn't he start, he was taking laudanum, which is opium.
It's like an opium.
It's like an opium, which was in sort of cough mixtures and all sorts of remedies. And then it was a problem that beset many people, which is they found they needed the remedy rather more often than they perhaps really did need it, because they got addicted to it.
So to just bringing that up is just looking at that he was not sober, and he was just in various
he was entering altered states. And in those altered states, it's possible he opened up to a stream of ancestral tradition and wisdom that he was able to articulate. But then you go on to say, but regardless of whether or not that's so, the fact of the case is that he's created this cultural tradition which, schools in Wales participate in, and it's the biggest cultural festival in Europe.
Which was his intention.
Yeah. So
that was his intention, to bring us back together so that we could honour and be proud of who we are, after some long history of oppression, and
sometimes it takes, if you look at the history of sort of esoteric movements, spiritual movements. Deception is a feature of them right up until, I think it's really only very recently, probably in the last, say, 50 years or something, that people, but virtually they were all at it. I mean, Gerald Gardner, who really developed Wicca and kind of created it from a various strands of influence. He used to say he had a doctorate when there's actually no evidence that he did. Thomas More, who was involved in the Druidry movement, Dr. Thomas More, nobody can trace his doctorate. People, there was a tendency for people to make up, make up stuff in order to be taken seriously. And I think one of the huge gifts that we've received in the last, recent decades, is that we can, the way that we can be honest about our creativity and honest about sources and say, hey, look, I was inspired to write this, or I was influenced by that, and I put it together. And the understanding as well is just because something old doesn't mean to say it's more valid than something that's new. I mean, somebody, at some point, somebody made it up, and why does somebody making something up 1,000 years ago, why is that superior to somebody making something up 200 years ago or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's complicated because in one sense, like we're looking at like the word Celtic, like, we could say, well, why can't someone then just sort of like label their entire practice as Celtic spirituality and that be that? Because there is also context that is important that perhaps some of these people didn't bring into their work, but maybe their intention wasn't for it to grow as much as it did, and things go out of control when you publish a book and then that person has it, then all of these people have it, and then movements start. It's uncontrolled, isn't it? And I think with a lot of this work is like art is like uncontainable. Like you can't contain it, you can't measure it. Like what is copying, what is inspiration, where do you draw the line between these things? And the greatest artists, the greatest masters copy and are inspired by other artists, and this is something I'm learning about a lot now. And I think when it comes to this realm of spiritual creation, a creation of practice, it's art. Like this is why I love the Awen, because it's all a part of creative exploration through spirituality, and it's then the academic conversation comes into it and looks at it in a different way. And they're both important depending on who you are and what you're looking for within it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it's complex, isn't it? I mean, you look at something like the Gundestrup Cauldron, which is the classic sort of Celtic work of art, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you think, well, hang on a minute, it was found in Denmark, not a place that we traditionally associate with the Celtic culture. And then I can't remember the last time, this is a while ago, I may be wrong, but I think isn't there a theory that it actually originated in Thrace, that it's Thracian? It starts to get difficult in terms of tracing exactly what is it, who made it, what influences were at play.
Yes.
So in the end, for you, how would you describe your spirituality? If you just met somebody, they said, what's your spirituality?
I get asked this a lot. It's I'm going to talk about shape-shifting, just because me and a friend Deb were talking about this. It shape-shifts. It's shifting. I'm interested in the exploration of, like, life through, like, awe-inspiring experiences, joy, and, like, a divinity, and these feelings of, like, wow, how incredible and beautiful is life, just because that's what initiated my spiritual experience. My spiritual life was initiated by being awe-inspired by life after spending just life as quite atheist and not really caring for much. So that's my I'm navigating through life with that as my sort of like, not the feeling, not to like always seek these experiences of bliss and things like this, but to remind others and myself that is possible, because there are a lot of people who live, spend their entire lives and even lineages. Like I'm breaking a chain of addiction within my family, where I can see that there wasn't any reverence towards life. There weren't any feelings of awe towards life. So that's where it all comes from. Right. And the ways that I explore that are just so vast and so broad. Like right now I'm looking into my own ancestry and my own lineage. But, if in 2 months' time I'm guided to travel to perhaps like study with an Indigenous elder from around, I know that's a part of my path as well. Right. Maybe then I will go towards
you'll
that.
go
but,
down. So do you think we need labels to describe our spirituality?
I think we need labels not to identify who we are, but to describe. Yeah, I do think words are good to describe who we are, but not necessarily to identify for me. But sometimes it might be important. Like I might, go through Obod and be like, I just love being a druid, and I am a druid, and that's my label, and it's just personal. It's personal.
That's right. I mean, for me, I think the thing is to not be overly identified with it. So I sort of I don't consider myself a druid or anything, actually. I mean, of any kind of label, even really basic labels. Like, I know that I am a druid in the sense of that's what I've dedicated a lot of my life to. I know that I'm male. I know that I'm, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't hold on to any of those identifications, really. My core identity is like a kind of free spirit or something. And I think more and more people feel that. But we have to use terms. We have to use labels in order to sort of give some sort of sense of what we're interested in and what sort of our field of interest is. Your particular fascination for the stories of Wales and the land that you're in, I sense in your videos and some of your messages, all the rest of it, there's this kind of indignation. It's like why didn't anybody tell me about this? There's a kind of energy in that statement. Hang on a minute.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, that's right. And that kind of has detonated this kind of passion and interest in it. Where do you think, if you kind of track that, where's it going?
Where's it going? Well, I'm about to do a master's degree in illustration and animation, and it's not just a degree for the illustration of drawing illustration, but it begins with that, and it's to illustrate a concept through like visual arts. And I've always known that visual arts are a part of how I'm going to express whatever it is in life. As a child, you either love drawing or horses or whatever it is, or sports. It's like I've always known that is a part of it, right? So I know that in terms of how I'm going to like express all that's within me next is going to be through through creative expression and through public interaction and bringing the wider public into my work so that it can be reflected on by people who are outside of my circles and within my niche. And I think that's what's quite interesting about like Obod and Druidry, where you do your ceremonies and things like anywhere. And it's like you bring that curiosity about, because the intention is to bring people to remember their nature, their true nature. And I think that's where it's going now. I'm getting a lot of, in like a really beautiful echo chamber. I love this echo chamber of where I am, but I want to bring it to the public.
You want to expand it because you're very active in social media. You have a beautiful Instagram channel and you do videos and shorts. Bring your creativity to bear in that, don't you? Yeah. And what you meant by I love my echo chamber, do you mean that the people who are looking at that are probably feel and think the same way that you do?
Yes.
Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah. So there's like disadvantages, obviously. I think the word echo chamber is used in a way like more of a negative thing.
Yes.
But I love all of the people around me who were all talking about connecting back to nature and spiritual exploration and things like this. But I want to like a ripple.
You want to go beyond that? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Because you said something nice in a recent post about how you love your sort of druid and Wiccan and pagan friends and community and all the rest of it, because it attracts really lovely, interesting people and on the same wavelength. And I think the thing about the echo chamber, the bubble, or whatever you want to call it, is we need the kind of platform, security, safety, grounding to be, with people we love and feel connected with and who think the same way. Because if you don't have that, you can't go out into the world and influence other people.
And feel safe to have
because otherwise, because you're kind of not safe, really. So I think it's fine to be in a bubble. This is just my sort of take on it, really. It's to be in a bubble, but then to just allow, as you say, and see. Maybe there are ways that come to you where you can reach beyond that.
Yeah, and it's not to like convert anyone.
No,
it's like through the art. It's to see what other people, how how my work can be informed by people who are outside of the bubble. You know, that's what I'm quite interested in at the moment. And the in-person work I do is with storytelling and ceremony and ritual on a small scale.
You do events, you get involved in events.
I get in, and
you do
like
workshops. And yeah, that's right. You know what came to me as you were saying that? We'd been talking earlier in the pub at the Long Man about Awen and the flow and all that.
Yeah.
The different, when you were saying it's not about converting, but you see, the interesting thing is that it's like the difference between getting established in a bubble, if you want to put it that way, amongst people of like mind, and then doing your thing and allowing your Awen to flow, is it's a radiant way of working where you trust that if you're doing good stuff, it'll flow out and people will pick it up beyond the bubble.
Yes.
And it's not messianic, it's not missionary, because that's trying to pull people in. That's a completely opposite energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Come and see what I'm doing because you need to join me because I'll offer you salvation and safety and all that. It's completely the opposite thing. It's the flowing of Awen.
Yes. Yeah. The flowing of Awen. And there's so just to be like super grateful and thankful for some of my teachers. I've got, you know, so many people I could name, but there's a lady I'd met called Emma and her husband Gareth, and they host these events, and Emma's been walking the land of Wales. She's not to, her husband Gareth is more, he did a BA in Celtics, MA in Celtic studies and things like this, but she walks the land and has slept on Taliesin's grave and, you know, just does whatever she's called to do. And then she'll find out about the history and the stories and things like this. But they've started an event called Awen Calls that I get involved in. And the entire retreat is based on allowing the Awen to actually guide the retreat and trusting that what will happen will happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really beautiful idea of theirs. And there's a friend of mine, Victoria, so I've been facilitating at my friends' retreats. I haven't run anything myself yet. And she runs a retreat at Caimabon, actually, which is actually very different, which is all going into the Welsh culture, where her husband cooks traditional Welsh food for the whole weekend, and you learn Welsh, and it's like structured, but you know what you're getting from it.
Yeah.
And there are just so many beautiful ways to do what it is, to create what it is that you're meant to create. And as I was saying earlier, it does shift in shape. And just for anyone that is listening, you know, if you know that you're going to create something and you know that there's something to come, like we were talking about this earlier, just the trusting in it like unfolding. But there's got to be commitment within that. And it's not a commitment to the thing you're doing or the craft that you're learning or the skill that you're learning. It's a commitment to the intention. And following that through is you will create something beautiful. And you know, and it's collaborating with what I call the muse of the universe, who I found out to be Ceridwen. You know, I've always worked with this muse of the universe and co-created with life to bring about better life for all. You know, it's just the way. And then I found out about Ceridwen and her role within that, and yeah.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lovely, because what it does is when you get it, I think, it relieves you of ultimately the delusion of control. You know, you can almost like trace so many of the problems of the world to the idea that we need to control something.
Yes.
And what, and if I dare to say it, Ceridwen teaches, or if what the Awen teaches, or what this approach teaches, is that if you allow the Awen to flow through you, the creative spirit to flow through you, you don't need to control it. I mean, you like you talk about intention. There is some degree of direction, but basically you're not controlling. There's a distinction between intention, direction, and control.
It's the devotion is a part of it, for me anyway, which isn't control, but it's a devotion to the path, and the intention is like the compass, where the compass goes, is pointing.
Which is why letting go is such a powerful, that's why in meditation and spiritual practice, that whole practice of letting go is such an important component of it, because then it allows the energy to flow.
I first was introduced into the Hindu mythology and then into Taoism, which I think if I had to give an answer to like, if you had to like use a label to describe how you live, it would probably be through, like, I'd say, well, look into Taoism, actually look into the Tao, because that is beneath everything else. That is how everything has come to me. It's like the river flowing and letting go, and Welsh mythology and this and all of these things join my river. But beneath that, it is just the flow. And the Awen it comes into that. And there's a very magical essence to the Awen that I found. And I think it is connected to the land of Wales. It's almost as if the land has got ideas and dreams as well. And when we open ourselves up to work with it, it's like, imagine like Awen, like, I don't know, just there waiting. And then whether you're on your own or you're in a circle and you're jamming in music, but when you go in with the intention for the Awen to arise at some point, like, you can't control it, it sort of like comes in and takes over and is like, yeah, it's quite alive. Like, it's quite alive. And I was thinking yesterday, actually, I'd love to know from you, like, what is the difference between Awen and just inspiration and itself? Like, what makes it different to just being inspired? Or do you feel like it is the same thing?
I think if you talk about inspiration, it's one word, but it's bigger than that. So in other words, if you think, what do you mean by inspiration? You can be inspired by another person. You can be inspired by a book, inspired by a landscape, and the inspiration could come to you at a kind of intellectual level, where suddenly a couple of concepts kind of click together, and you go, aha! You've got that sort of aha moment. So it can be at the intellectual level. You can be inspired at a kind of emotional level, where something really touches your heart and opens something up for you. And even, I think, the word inspire is to breathe in, isn't it? It comes from that, from the Latin, connected with breathing. There's a way that inspiration can come to you, I think, even in a sort of physical way. There can be some sort of kind of physical transmission of energy that brings some new. It's about sort of something coming into you, and then it's a question of, well, where's it coming from? And you can be inspired by your subconscious. So you can go into a dream and you can have some strange, surreal dream that just inspires you to write a story, for instance, and that's coming from material that you've repressed or material that you've forgotten that kind of recombines in the cauldron of your own personal unconscious. But then I believe you can be inspired from beyond the realm of the personal unconscious. And then it's a question, well, who's inspiring you? Is it other beings? Angels? I had the most extraordinary experience a few years back. I just went for a little walk out through our garden down there, and I went out through the door. And as I was walking down the lane, I had this sense that there was this beautiful presence about 10 foot over to my left. And I thought, what is this? And it felt almost kind of angelic, like it was an angel. And it sort of slightly faded. And I carried on walking. And then at some point I thought, hang on a minute, you've had this experience. And then you've just carried on as if that's normal, and you haven't even given it a second thought. Why don't you try and contact that feeling again and that sense of a being? So I came back in, I walked across the lawn there, and I went into a little kind of garden house that we have, and got my laptop first, went in there, and I thought, I will just tune in and try and contact that sense of this angelic spirit. So I closed my eyes, and then the spirit was there, this kind of angelic spirit was there. So I opened my eyes to write. As I opened my eyes, I looked, and there was a postcard on the wall directly in front of me of an angel climbing in through a bedroom window.
Oh yeah, you told me about
Did I tell you about that? Yeah. And it turned out it was a postcard my daughter bought in Italy, and she stuck on the wall there, and I didn't know she'd stuck it there. And so there's a sort of rational explanation for it, as it were. But the fact is that at that precise moment, that's when I saw it.
Yeah.
And then I wrote this little book as a result. And I just asked questions. I just said, what happens when we die? And then I just wrote. It was the easiest thing to write because I didn't really write it. So you can say, okay, I was getting my inspiration from this being. And then I believe there are lots of beings up there And, maybe there's one divine source. So I think Awen can flow from all these different sources, but ultimately from the goddess, from divine spirit, if you like.
Yeah.
And can flow through us.
Yeah. Like what my belief around Awen is, it's an earth, it's very earthly.
Yeah.
And not just from my experience, but from how it's written about by the people who were originally speaking of the Awen. We were talking about language earlier and how originally it was, tapped into through poetry and language and sound. But within Druidry, it's more just expansive creativity, isn't it? It's like it's really expanded that understanding. But we're looking back at a time where things were quite dogmatic. So perhaps people were wanting to be, maybe it was here, but no, they had this way of things, and now we're in a world that is more free.
Yeah.
And we can be free in our expression. We're tapping into it in a more expansive way.
So you could say that the understanding of the term has evolved or changed with time.
And our understanding of working with it and using it, just like in the same way as our way of working with spirit and spirituality and being able to be spiritual and not religious, it's like working with the same thing. But yeah, for me, some of my most profound connections to Awen have been through poetry though, and writing. So
absolutely.
there is that,
there is that.
There is
it's
something
like
that comes up
really
and it
important.
just comes through, and it's just wow. When you look back at it and you're like, who was that?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Which I haven't had that through. I guess I don't really capture it any of my other mediums.
Do you have it through art? When you're creating art, do you feel something beyond you sort of working through you?
So this is what I'm really interested to go into now more, actually. So that's what I'm more interested to go into now.
Explore that. Yeah.
But not much where I've looked back at it and been as like bamboozled as to where it came from in comparison to my writing. But I know a lot of artists do have that. It's like you've got the Red Book there by Carl-Jung, and you're just talking about the listening to the angelic essence and going into the shed, and then there's a postcard there, and it made me think of how this podcast is called This Magical Life, because things like this happen, don't they? And it's like, this magical life, let's do a podcast about it. But I've been learning about Carl Jung's Red Book and him being an artist as well as a psychologist, and how he would allow his subconscious visions to come out onto paper. And I had an idea to ask you, maybe Philip would have this book, probably. And then it's the book that's just out, the only book that's out on your table for me to read as I sit down, So it's like there are beyond workings, when for me, working with Awen is perhaps in the New Age world. Before I'd started working with Welsh terms, I would just work with guided. I was guided by muse or guided by this, whereas Awen gives me a word to describe specifically in relation to creative expression and my creative path. Because you did a podcast with Tiffany Lazick, was it recently, on psychopumps? It's just talking about another realm of being guided by for darkness, for death and grief and all of these things. And Awen seems to be tied into the land and the beings of the land and the plants and the trees and even the animals and our creative expressions as vessels for creativity, beings that are able to do all of these wonderful things, that's what makes humans different to other animals, is that we are able to create in ways that are just, you cannot see it anywhere else in the entire universe. The Awen is that energy that works through us so that we can create.
And it seems to be, I agree. And it seems to be connected with water, doesn't it? Not only just because our experience of it is one of a sort of flowing energy like water, but there's something about the presence of streams and rivers and waterfalls and holy wells and springs and the sea, which help us to connect to Awen and help the Awen to flow through us.
And there's so much possibility within within clear water. Like we as water beings are quite full, like the inner sort of reflections of who we are as human beings. It's all sort of here and still. Whereas when we come into contact with water, we're coming into contact with like a vast universe of possibilities.
Yes.
Is sort of how it works. And we sort of merge with that, even though we doesn't feel or look like we are. If you go into meditation with water, you do merge with that.
Yeah.
But for me, since working with water, everything has changed. Everything. For the past, I think, 6 years, I've been working with water.
Oh, really?
Through sacred devotion, and it's just incredible. Here, while I'm down here, I'm looking for where the springs are and where the wells are. And
lovely.
Yeah, the water spirits, they guide, and it's, for the mythology, it's all the portals into Awen, which is where the Awen is brewed from. The portals are usually through water. So, yeah.
So much to explore. So, Stella, thank you. I think it's always lovely to finish on, instead of wrapping everything up and everything being like, oh, now we understand everything.
Here's the conclusion.
Here's the conclusion. This is why this subject, this whole sort of area that we're interested in, it all flows together. Creativity, spirituality, living well on the earth. They all flow and are connected, and it's just endless, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
And good luck with all your projects.
Thank you. Yeah. Like, as you just said, like, people listening will there are so many things we've spoken about, and there might be something that they take, and that's what they'll dive into. And thank you so much.
No, bless you.
Thank you for taking me to the Long Man. And I'm excited to explore the rest of Sussex.
Yeah. Be sure to subscribe, share, and join me next time for more inspiration.